2020, Virginians reimagined the monument of Confederate General Robert E. Lee by covering it with graffiti and projecting the faces of Black thinkers and activists onto the monument. Like Virginians, many in North Carolina and across the world question certain monuments and memorials in our public spaces and wish to reimagine them. Please raise your hand if you've ever looked at a monument, read its plaque, and questioned its meaning and its place in our public spaces. Those of you who raise your hands know what I mean. In your mind, you might have also reimagined these monuments. If you didn't raise your hand, don't worry. After this talk, you will know about the questionable background of some of these monuments and might approach them differently in the future. The whole story of reimagining memorials became important to me when I started studying public history. Knowing that I focus on historic sites, my friends started asking me questions about the history of memorials and monuments. At times, it was really difficult for me to talk about the reasons we memorialize certain figures and events in our public spaces. However, I felt obligated to talk about the reasons we memorialize them and at the same time the dark history associated with some of these structures. But then my friends would eventually go on and ask me, why do we even have such historical representations in our public spaces? I'm not sure if your friends, family members, community members, or even students have put you in the spotlight like this before, but this was true for me. And these questions were doubly difficult for me to answer because I've studied architecture and historic preservation before beginning my journey in public history. And believe me, the architect preservationist inside me would like to preserve everything as found. But when it comes to these structures associated with discrimination and racism, I couldn't defend the architect preservationist inside me. I was hoping to find a middle ground. So I thought, if I do the research, I would find many ways ordinary citizens or even experts alter the monuments to convey a different message while preserving the historical footprint. To me, by keeping the historical footprint and altering the monuments, there would be enough tangible evidence to learn from past mistakes and enough change to reinterpret the monuments in a new light and create more inclusive spaces for future generations. Sometimes keeping the historical footprint means removal of a controversial element within a historical context. For instance, the statue of Robert E. Lee was removed from the Duke University's chapel in August 2017 following violent clashes in Charlottesville, Virginia. In this case, the removal of a controversial element within a historical context leaves an emptiness that intrigues people to wonder about the missing figure, ask questions, and rethink their values. Such removal is like an intervention in a monumental body, not a complete erasure of a historical narrative. Sometimes reimagining happens in the form of unauthorized interventions by ordinary citizens, activists, or artists. Many interventions have been made to the bronze statue of transatlantic slave trader Edward Colston in Bristol, UK. Since the 1990s, there were debates about honoring Colston in the city. Some Bristolians preferred retaining the monument to removing it. However, there were numerous attempts to add interpretive plaques or elements to the statue to convey a different message. For instance, sculptor Will Coles added an unauthorized, however official-looking plaque to the Colston statue's pedestal to brand Bristol as a slavery capital in 2017. In May 2018, an anonymous yarn bomber attached a red woolen ball and chain to the legs of the Colston statue. In October 2018, another anonymous artist installed 100 figures laying on a slave ship next to the Colson statue's pedestal. Within a few months of their installations, all these interventions have been reversed, and the statue was restored to its original state. In June 2020, following Black Lives Matter protest, the statue was toppled, defaced, and thrown away into Bristol Harbor, and its pedestal was covered in graffiti. Eventually, the statue was fished out and displayed in a museum for a short period of time, but then it moved into a storage with no public display. After the removal, sculptor Mark Quinn created a 3D scanned sculpture of one of the Black Lives Matter protesters, Jen Reed, and placed it on the place of Colson's statue. The artist did not have permission to put his artwork, so the city removed the sculpture a day after its installation. Probably the fate of Colson's statue would be different if any of these temporary interventions became permanent installations through a strong community-expert relationships and officials' collaborations. For example, while some Bristolians found the artwork of 100 figures offensive and hurtful, many Bristolians found the artwork as a powerful memorial that incites moments of reflection and learning for the visitors. Throughout my research, I came to realize that people's unauthorized interventions are usually reversed. In so many cases, the community-expert relationship is still a top-down process. However, in some cases, the alliance between designers, organizers, community members, and sponsors result in authorized interventions in historic sites. The Oak Grove's Friedman Cemetery Memorial in Salisbury, North Carolina, is probably one of these cases. The cemetery has been a burial ground for free and enslaved African Americans since 1770. In 2006, artist Maggie Smith and landscape architects Reynolds and Joel reshaped the cemetery into a memorial. The project was spearheaded by a citizens committee and received public and private funding. In the cemetery, there was a wall that separated black and white burial sections. The designers proposed a symbolic opening, a breach in the stone wall that separated these sections. For them, it was important to symbolically and literally reunite the segregated communities while preserving the historical footprint. Through a collaboration between community members, designers, organizers, and sponsors, this historic site was transformed to create a more inclusive space for future generations. And that's important. But why does it matter? There is a great deal of power in memorials and monuments in our public spaces. We walk under their shadow on a daily basis, and we are directly or indirectly affected by their presence. Since these structures are tangible historical reminders in our public spaces, any physical alteration could be a powerful tool to reimagine them and reshape the collective memory of a space. Our historic sites are considered unofficial learning environments, so changes in these sites would allow for a new interpretation that provides insight into the past and connects the site with the current issues and struggles. To bring these alterations to our memorials and monuments, the community-expert relationship needs to improve. To improve the community-expert relationship, all participants must transcend their conventional roles and responsibilities and involve in different aspects of such projects. You may ask how. For instance, public historians like me need to work with community members, and they need to listen to oral histories and work with different stakeholders in such projects. The designers, on the other hand, need to incorporate historical data and community needs and voices into their artwork. The organizers need to work with community members rather than controlling them. They need to mediate effectively between different stakeholders in such projects. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the community members. The community members need to get involved in the process of placemaking and meaning-making proactively rather than waiting for the designers or organizers to reach out. It was a community member's curiosity that led to the Oak Groves Friedman project. So the next time you see a monument and you question its meaning in our public spaces, you can come up with an idea for changing it. Do the research. Find the institutions that preserve that historic site, or even interested professionals, and share your ideas with them. We can start bringing the changes we want to see in our communal spaces by transcending our conventional roles and responsibilities. Thank you.